what I've always known about informality, and this goes across my artwork and different things that I've done throughout my life, is that being informal is good because it makes it more approachable when things are informal. It and I was like grabbing my coffee at the same time. She like patted me on the hand. It was just nice. Like, yeah, I know what's happening. It's okay. So I don't know. Again, that's not really an artistic moment, but it's a real. I like those moments.
Welcome to EM CONVERSA, a podcast of the curatorial art and research collective Mais Uno Mais Un. Today's episode is part of the Play the Ground conversations, where we try to dive deeper in the experiences of the artists who took part in our 2024 summer residency program. In episode 4, we are talking with SARAH KILGALLON about her time in Trafaria, but more precisely in Cova de Vapor and Segundo Terral. We will hear about her special methods to connect to the local residents through her dog Fred, and all the fun she had building sandcastles and creating water sculptures with the kids of the neighborhood. But before I go too far into it, it's probably best to hear from herself.
Right, here we go. So my name is SARAH KILGALLON. I am now a resident in Lisbon. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I am mainly a photographer and a writer, and that has melded into doing a lot of mixed media, because I find that staying in one lane is boring. So I like to mix my art. I don't know. I believe a few things about art. First of all, I think it has a lot of definitions, so I'm not tied to art should be this or art should be that. But for me, I like the idea of not only am I expressing something or I'm trying to get somewhere technically, but I really find that that I really like the idea of art for the people. And this is my own personal thing from having a literature background, where it's an old expression, so forgive me, but it's like too cool for school. Like, like it's like people are just like so literary. So it really bothers me, because I feel like you can have this really esoteric thing, and if nobody understands it but you and like 5 people, then that's fine. But for me, I really like this idea that art is for everybody and that you can connect, and not everybody's going to like or connect with everything, but I like having that intention. I also believe that in art, there's no goal for me except to go further, whatever that means. So because there's no goal, I feel like there's no pressure that I need to meet some sort of bar or some sort of explanation to other people of what I'm doing. I just feel like that there's not really a mistake in the art, that you are where you are, and and for me, it's about pushing my own boundaries, whatever that means, whether it's like a piece that's really emotional or a piece that's really technical or a piece that ended up being something that I wasn't expecting. Why I really resonated with the informality as resistance is because I feel that I'm an informal person. But and what I like the idea about informality is informality doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. And I think sometimes people think, well, if I look a certain way and I do this and I talk this way, then and I'm more formal, that means I know what I'm doing. And that's not always the case. And I find that sometimes the formality can actually dehumanize, and you're actually trying to be something or prove something or show something. Whereas informality, I feel like it's like, okay, so we're trying this thing. It didn't work. It didn't, or there's issues or whatever, and you kind of take a step back and look at it and move forward from there, whatever forward means, or you progress from there. It's a better word. So I really felt like that was kind of the strength of the program or not even program's not a good word, the residency where we're just progressing towards something. And I also really liked I like what Maizun stands for, this kind of collective with the neighborhoods and getting everyone involved, and especially the kids and the younger generations. So I really felt like that was a good place for me to explore, and the fact that it was like the Lisbon quote unquote city limits, that it was kind of like outside of like the mainstream contemporary or whatever. So that's
Okay, interesting.
Mhm.
You ended up answering our 13 question as well.
Just moved forward with
uh,
it.
I'm sorry,
yes.
sorry.
No, it's super okay. It's okay. Um, and when you joined the residency, what were your initial expectations, and what did you know about the place when you first arrived?
That is a great question. And it's a great question because it was like, I was like, I'm going to go to the residency and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. And you get there and you tell people you don't know your plans and they're like, okay, like, you know what I mean? And it's just sort of, and then it's a great moment for me when this happens because I realize how much things are in my head and things sound awesome in your head. And then when you actually try to do the work to do it, it doesn't matter if it's a project with other people or yourself. You're like, wow, okay, so lower the expectations. Let's get back to reality. So, in theory, let's just call this, in theory, I understood that the neighborhoods I was working with um, were like, they were, two of them were informal neighborhoods, and in Trafaria, I didn't go into the Trafaria neighborhood. I did Cova de Vapor and Segunda Terão. I knew they were informal neighborhoods, and from my own work background, because for a long time I worked with horses, and it's kind of like an informal neighborhood in a very different way, but it's sort of that same sort of insular vibe you can feel. So I knew that. I read about the neighborhoods. I had never visited. And so my expectations was that because I'm informal, that I would kind of go in there and I would be kind of lay out my plans. Obviously, I knew that I'd be speaking in Portuguese and that this would be a barrier for me. Uh, so I had notes of words that I always forget. Like I went in there, like I was just like, right, we'll do this. And so, but I just thought I would have an easier time. Um, and I just thought like, well, I'll hang around enough that people would be interested. And that was the case. People were interested. It wasn't my language that was a problem. I think some of it is that I would get mentally exhausted. You know what I mean? And it limited. Like if I walked into a neighborhood and I was kind of tired and my Portuguese wasn't on point, I was gonna have a very hard time trying to explain myself. And I realized that I had to slow myself down and pull back my expectations because people weren't living inside my head, and I know what I would like to do, but that doesn't mean everyone wants to do it. And I'm walking into their neighborhood, um, and and it's sort of, and I understand that sometimes people get tired of other people. They think that maybe people are asking something from them. And I understand that too. Like, um, so yeah, that probably didn't answer a lot of your question, but yeah, I mean, I think it was I think it was a great learning experience for me. And I hope some people that I spoke with or that I took photos, I hope that they were able to get something out of it too. You know what I mean? Like, I hope like that left them of like, oh, remember when that American came in here and took the photos? Like, I thought that was okay. Like, I hope that was at that sort of, that not resonated, that's too strong of a word, but that ends up being like a positive memory for them in the future.
Hopefully. Yes. You already mentioned a bit of like that language barrier that happened with the local community. And how did you actually connect with them for the first time? Was there a certain moment that clicked between you and the residents of the neighborhood?
I think you know what really connected with people is when I started talking about the kids. It was like when I was just like, well, I was hoping to do some workshops of, these acrylic lift photos, and maybe kids and adults could do the workshop. The adults really weren't into it, but when I was like, but I'll be on the beach playing with the kids, they were like, okay. Like it was like, and I don't have kids, so it's not something that's forefront in my mind, but my friends all have kids, or most of them have kids. So, and the thing is I temporarily forgot that when you pay attention to someone's kid, people appreciate that. Like it's like, oh, it's like, oh, you want to spend time with my child is much different than like, I want to take a photo in front of the house where you live. Do you know what I mean? Or your neighborhood. Like, so, so when I really felt like that was a good switch for people, no matter who they were and whether they brought their kid to the beach or not. I felt like they were like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Like you're doing sand sculptures and playing with them in the water and just taking photos, not of them, but of like the actual things that they create. I found that was a real learning moment for me, where it's, not that we don't know how dangerous the internet can be, but especially now, I get it. Like people don't want their kids on anybody's social media except their own, which is private, because of all the weirdness that's on the internet. Do you know what I mean? And
Of course, yes.
and so yeah, I mean, I think it really helped me taking the pressure off of trying to explain myself and who I was doing, because I do know, like, my Portuguese is okay. I think Caroline can attest to this a little bit, but it's rough. It's rough. I'm probably talking like, I'll give myself credit, maybe 6-year-old at times. But you know what I mean? Like I realize it's rough. So it doesn't do me any good to try to complicate things. Do you know what I mean? So I kept everything really simple, and being with the kids and doing like sand sculptures and playing in the water is pretty simple. Splashing water.
Kids also have their own kids language, so you don't really have to know the...
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Kids usually just point to something, and if they'll say it like 1,000 times, and when when I got it wrong, they'd be like, oh my God, you can get this. I'm like, okay. Yeah, so I think that was a great moment for me.
That's really amazing. Okay, and were there any other collaborations with local community during your residency that you established?
I wouldn't call it collaborations, but what I would call it is I made it a point, both in Segunda Terrain and especially in Cova de Vapor, because they have great Bolo de Berlins. But I made it a point to have like a coffee or a beer there, and just sit and talk to people, and not like talk to people like some in-depth thing, but just like, hey, how you doing? Da, 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 like Amoro key, like just real simple things. And to me, I think that even establishing a connection is some sort of collaboration. So I guess that was a humanistic collaboration rather than a artistic one.
But still, you did got something out of it for your artistic process and the interactions with the...
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've found about my art whether it doesn't matter what I'm doing, is that every connection I make with people, obviously I see things and I'm inspired by things, but it's funny how people's words or people's, how they look or how that influences like my art, whether I'm writing or whatever, because you're remembering when you said something and maybe someone like gave you the look, or whether, you know, there was some sort of connection with something that was funny, or, you know, like you just have these small things, and how that not only influences my art, but just kind of influences how I move throughout the world, which again is going to influence whatever I create.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit more how the connections that you created with the neighborhood and some of the kids that you met influenced your artistic work during the residency?
So what was really funny, so it happened in both neighborhoods. So Fred was with me, which, by the way, like, Fred is like the best icebreaker anyway, because he just is. Like, I think people see me and they're like, mm-mm, and then they see Fred, and Fred's like, hey, what's up? So it totally kind of eases my way in. But when the first project I did with the kids was just, let's build some sort of sandcastle, whatever you want it to be. So then I was like, so what are we going to name this castle? Like, you know, and like they both named it, like both the kids in the both neighborhoods, Castello de Fred. And I just thought that was like just so funny that it was, because Fred's like super chill with kids, and he's older, so he doesn't run around, but he like loves pats and treats. So, and he was really good with the kids. And I thought it was just a great moment where two separate kids in two separate instances, and they both name it the same thing. You kind of see how not only art, but how much animals are just such a positive influence on kids, and how they look at it. Do you know what I mean? Like, because for them to name it that, then they had to somehow imagine that Fred was like in this castle that we were creating. So I like that. I like that. It was a surprise, good moment. And I think for me, it sort of told me again that the expectations that we were talking about earlier that you walk in with, I don't know, sometimes you just, I don't know if it's probably humanly impossible not to have expectations, but throwing away those expectations lets in these other things, you know. The other cool thing is I did these splashing water, and I call them water sculptures, just because I don't know how other people feel, but ever since I was a kid, I loved splashing water, and you get that momentary kind of sculpture. And I don't know, I was just always entranced in that. And I did this project 2 years ago. It was called Liberdad, and I just went to Carcavelos, and I walked in the water with my camera with it protected with a water housing, and I told people to splash me. And it was really funny because people are like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, do it. And some people didn't want to. And I told them, I was like, look, I'm looking for the splash. Your face will not be recognizable because I'll put shadows in it. Da, da, da. Anyway, everybody, even the grumpiest person, once they started splashing me, started laughing. And they reminded me, I was like, wow, everyone's a kid when they splash water. So with the kids, and I was telling them, I was like, wow, we're going to make these like water sculptures. And they're like, wow, how are we going to do that? You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm going to capture it with the camera. And they're like, whoa. That it was cool to see kids playing in water. You know, it was like, okay, so I had adults acting like acting like kids or their inner kid, however you want to do it, but then actually seeing the kids, and like some of the kids took it so seriously, like, what if I splash like this, or like they're already trying to, like, you know, figure out like how they could splash more, splash higher. So yeah, all those for me were really good surprises. And I think I don't think I've fully processed it yet. First of all, like I'm totally with the water idea. Like I don't know how I'm going to take that further, but I want to, because just seeing the kids and seeing the photographs that I got out of that, I really thought they were pretty cool. I did photograph one adult splashing, and she had fun. So so that was good. Because and that's another thing, is I really enjoy seeing people have fun. And I really, when people can make art and have fun, that's really important to me. So yeah, and I think the work with the kids, with the sand sculptures, I don't know where that's going, but I feel like whatever that idea is, like I'm still carrying it with me. So
It's super interesting that you mentioned your connection with water, with those splashing stories, because Trafaria is surrounded by water.
right.
And usually people from there use the water to catch some fish, go to the beach, have some fun, and get tanned. So it's super cool that you approach them to do something like that, something different that calls for their inner child. And besides the Fred story and the sand sculpture, is there any other stories, experiences that you had with the community that also influenced your work in the residency? That you remember of?
Right. I remember. So what I really realized with the community, and it was interesting, in COVID vapor, when the beach got crowded. When the beach wasn't crowded earlier in the morning, I found the people there were a little bit more open to, hello, what are you doing? Da, da, da. But when I was trying to do my splashing thing, I really understood that the beach was not only a family beach, but that it was kind of a closed community within itself. And to tell you the truth, I didn't approach some people because I got a little bit of vibe of like, we're at the beach, I'm with my family, and this is what I want to do. Like, I don't, like, I really don't, I just got the vibe of like, you know, maybe this isn't the thing. Like, or I try to catch people's eye and they wouldn't catch it. And I realized that I feel like that's a little bit of a change where I think pre-COVID, I don't even know if I remember pre-COVID anymore, but COVID, people were so, like, when you did see somebody, you were like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I think people were a little open, and post-COVID has been a little insane. Like, people are busy. I mean, there's wars happening. I mean, there's like a lot happening, and I always, even though I am a photographer and I do some street photography and I do a lot of things, I'm also understanding that people like their privacy like I do. And and so I think maybe that was a little bit more of a, not a barrier, but something I definitely was paying attention to. Is this someone who's open, or is this someone who just wants to be left alone? Because there's a lot of ways we're not left alone anymore. And I was a little, it was it was interesting to see the switch, and it took me a little bit of like, okay, like that's okay, like not everybody has. I was like in my head, I was like, not everybody has to participate. You know what I mean? Like clearly they're just not. Um, but I think, but I think, I think for me, it's always good to interact. Like there was a lot of me of just explaining what I was doing, and that I was a photographer, and I'm at the beach because I want to take like a different view of Segunda Terão or Cova del Vapor, like, then I'm just trying to look for a new perspective, not with my aim being like, oh, this is going to be portraiture, da da da. I think what was funny about one experience is that there was the woman who worked at the bakery that makes the awesome bolo de Berlins. She had 2 kids, and they were at the beach, and I was usually playing with them, and then some cousins or some other kids would come. And there was someone else who worked there that was like, you didn't ask for my email, because I was emailing the parents every day with the pictures I took so they would understand of what I was taking. And this other woman who worked there who didn't have any kids, she's like, you didn't ask for my email address. And I was like, and I'm sorry I didn't. I was like, what's your email address, right? And it was funny because it was one of those moments where I think this woman just wanted to be included in everything. And the mother kind of looked at me, and it was one of those moments where you're like, yep, this is what we're doing. And I like those moments because when they happen with people you don't really know, it's kind of like this kind of like little taste of knowing somebody. Because usually those moments only happen with either family member or friends, you know, when like something's happening and you look at your friend, you're like, and this is happening now. So it was little bits of that. And it, and I was like grabbing my coffee at the same time. She like patted me on the hand. It was just nice, like, yeah, I know what's happening. It's okay. So I don't know. Again, that's not really an artistic moment, but it's I like those moments. And I think me living here, and it's important for me to like, I'm trying to be a part of my community in the neighborhood where I live in Ajuda. So I value those connections a lot, because I'm not from here. So my original base is now a new original base. So I'm building as I go. That's somewhat answering your question, Carolyn.
It does.
Yes, it is. And it's super funny when you say that those moments are not artistic, but they are in some way, because you may not think about your artistic work and how you'll use those moments for your practice. But
Sure.
later, when you stop to think about it and to think about your emotions and the way that you connect it with the place and with the people, you use those informations to create art.
True.
So those are the pre moments of the artistic process and the artistic um, creative thing, you know. So they are always an artistic moment.
Everything is artistic.
Yes, everything is art depending on the lens that we
True.
use.
And talking about the process itself, was there any challenges that you encounter in the informal, territories, just while working with the people, interacting, creating? Was there something that was a challenge for you on the process?
I think I think what was a challenge is that I mean, I'm sure the language barrier didn't help, but I think when I told people what they were doing, what I was doing, some people were more suspicious than others, and it just was just, it's sort of like, I don't know how people, like, I just don't know. Yeah, I think, you know, it was challenge, like the people's first reaction was challenging sometimes, where people are suspicious, and I get it, like I don't, you know, I mean, COVID of vapor, like it's clearly, right? I'm not Portuguese. You know what I mean? Like it's just sort of, and the same with Segunda Terán. Like you know, it's like, you know, I'm not from here, and it's, and then, and I understand of like, not that people are like, you don't belong here, but it's sort of like, what are you doing here? And I understand that, because like I said, previous work experience with like working in closed environments with horses, you know, you see someone new and people, you're like, what do you want? You know, and so that was, it was a challenge that was in the back of my head, and then I remembered what a challenge it was. Like I remember, like I was like, right, this is a challenge. This is, and I think too, especially in Segunda Terán, they're living with a lot of uncertainty, you know, and I saw the place where they tore down that house, and I was just like, wow, like that's brutal, like, you know, I mean, and so I understand that it's just like, what are you doing in my neighborhood, and what do you want? Do you know what I mean? Like I get that, and I think being the first artist and the first year was, again, it's going to bring challenges, I think, but I also think that this is what I like about Mizuno is because it's like, it's, for lack of a better term, this isn't like a hit and run thing. Okay, we're here and then we're going to try something else. Like you guys go back and you go back. So I think, and I think that's a great thing. I think it's like the consistency is what helps. So I do believe that whatever seeds were sown, God, I just hate that expression, but there I am using it. Whatever seeds were sown this year by the group of artists come in, I think it's just gonna strengthen and benefit what happens next year or the coming years. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural humanistic barriers that I was facing. I didn't. If anything, I would say for my part that I forgot how hard it was. Do you know what I mean? So you're going in there and it's like, yeah, it's gonna be hard. And then you're like, wow, yep, it's hard. But yeah, but then, you know, when I think about challenges, it's just sort of like, if I wanted something easy, I'd be doing something else. So, and then what is, like, who said life wasn't going to be challenging? So why should my art be challenging? You know what I mean? Like this whole thing about convenience and da 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 da, and this should be, you know, whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It definitely was really, the experience was definitely really impactful in a, you know, in a very good way.
Definitely, yes. That's really great. We can also talk in most cases here of just simply the art of showing up, because once you're saying, the first impression of people in the community is always quite hard, challenging, because they don't know you. But then once you're entering again and again, you're starting to be more familiar with the people and the place itself.
Right.
Okay. And all what you're taking from the work in the residency and with the local community, how can you take it on your place where you live in? So your own neighborhood. Is there something that you're gonna apply to the place where you live in and how you're interacting with the people that are close by?
That's a good question. I think again, I think it's a sense of being aware of my surroundings, being aware. I think forget even like paying attention to your phone or whatever. Like I can get lost in my head and being just like just walking down the street and just being like, well, no. So really, really, really just mentally marking where I am, like just in whatever that means. Like just I think taking the time to notice where I am, and I think taking the time to notice other people, whatever that means, whether you're saying hi or whatever, but just literally being more awake, not even aware, but just really like awake to what makes this place the place that it is, whatever that means, you know.
Yeah, there's this raising awareness around it. So it's also something that it's not only bringing a lot to your artistic practice, but again to your life and then in general. So
Yeah. And I think it's important because I try to be active here. So, I teach the kids, the little kids, real little kids, the Basika. I teach them like English, and there's like an adult English class that I do. And it's always, when we're doing this, because I'm not from here, it's always a cultural exchange. Do you know what I mean? It's always something that I've grown up with that isn't present here. Do you know what I mean? And it's always something that I'm getting used to here for no other reason than there's an ocean that separates Boston from here. So I think it's always good. It's always good to be, just to be aware and just to look at things in that kind of like a kid would, like instead of being judgmental, being like, wow, okay, that's new, just or just a different, I don't know, just noticing the difference, because noticing the difference is actually, it's human. We should notice that things are different. People, aren't machines. People have different moods, whether not even throughout the week, but throughout the day. So I don't know. It's always good. It's always good to be awake.
mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll change here at least two questions um, because they resonate better with the things that you are saying now. Um, how did the residency influence your future artworks? And how do you relate everything that you did with the informality theme? You started talking about it earlier, but if you want, you can develop it more.
So I think what I've always known about informality, and this goes across my artwork and different things that I've done throughout my life, is that being informal is good because it makes it more approachable when things are informal. Um, and the thing about informality is that in theory it can be more forgiving and flexible. And again, I'm going to say this again, but being informal also means that I, instead of using the formal you, that I need to realize that there's going to be a lot of different demands, and I don't mean demands from my environment, but demands on like emotionally and mentally, like being able to move more fluid into what I'm thinking, like always being able to change up my plans. Like, okay, like I wanted to work with sand today, but the kids are not working with sand today, so we're going to play soccer today, or we're going to play another game, or just and I'm using the kids because that's really who I worked with, and being okay with that, being because I think that the thing about formality that makes it easier for people is that there's like a set of like these little mini goals that you have or whatever. There's like structure, there's more structure. And with structure, even if you don't like the rules, you know there are rules, right? So it's kind of easy. Like, it's like if you have a rule of like you're not going, cross the red line, then that's a rule. So it's like something has been taken away, but then you also kind of have like a boundary. The thing with informality is that you understand that life isn't like crossing the red line, that things are really flexible and that rules change all the time. And I don't mean rules like governmental rules, but people's rules, people's boundaries, they change all the time. And that just means a lot more work, for lack of a better term. And I think what I learned from it is that this whole experience is that there really is no timetable of what I'm doing. Like there's no I want to get here before I'm this age, or I want to get here before I die. Like there's zero bucket list. I have zero bucket list. And I think for me, it brings more things into the day. Like just being like appreciate what I'm doing now, not what I hope to get. Like if I'm taking photos, for example, I'm going to appreciate where I'm at today and take these photos where I'm at, instead of like saying like, well, next week I'm going to be in the Algarve, and I think like that's going to be a better photo with water. That like that's fine to have those, but to just say like, I'm here in my neighborhood today, which is 20 minutes away from the Tejo even, so by foot. So what can I get today? And it brings it more in focus of really living in the now. And I think that's when you talk about people who are living very informally, whether they want to or whether it's circumstances or whatever, or whether it's because of economic or war insecurity or whatever, like there are people who have no choice but to live very informally. And what's amazing is that they do what they need to do to put it together. And sorry, what just popped into my mind, which is kind of relevant, is there was a gym in Gaza that was destroyed because of the war, and the owner dragged out all the equipment he could and cleaned it up. And now in like this one part of Gaza, like people can just go to this gym. It's like outside, it's like super informal, but it was really like, wow, like, and they talked about the helping people with the frustrations and the insecurity. And it, when I read the story this morning, I don't know, for me, it's like informality also equals human resilience, you know, and being resilient. And I think anything that teaches me more resilient or how to be more resilient or thinking about that is a good thing, because the last thing I want to be is like have blinders on, or I must do things this way, or I can only see the things this way, or like the more resilient I can be and the more open I can be to suggestions and how people are doing things, and the better off I am. So not only in art but in life, which is my life, art. So
Yeah, informality can also be seen as learning how to deal with the unforeseen,
exactly.
right? Grabbing the example that you gave, instead of thinking about the best place to take a certain picture, you enjoy the moment and you do it with the resources that you already have.
Right.
And then you'll see what you do with
Right.
that result. So that's super cool that you learn that and that you will bring that to your future works. Yeah.
Definitely, yes. And from your experience of being in the community and in the neighborhood, is there a certain vision or future that you can imagine for Trafaria, then Skuntuhau, or the Cabo de Vapor? And if so, or maybe if there is a certain work that could be developed in those neighborhoods?
I think what was cool about the residency is that in the, let's just say what would you call that, where the studio was, like Trafaria proper? I don't, is that how you would say that? Trafaria, like the prop, like, and I mean, I don't mean like the center proper, I don't mean proper, but like proper as in like the center, would you call that like the center of Trafaria?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking because I don't know. So I thought that was cool. And in Code of Vapor, you had the Biblioteca, which is cool. And I wish I tried to get in touch with the Catholic diocese, but because I was hoping like that, because they have like a little chapel there. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's like in the back. It's got that cool like wood carving thing. It's like super cool. I contacted them and asked if like we could use that, if I could use that space just as a meeting center, because sometimes just the beach as a meeting center is fine, but I was thinking more of like a real touchstone. I really wish Segundo Town had that. Not just for me really, but for, I think, the people, just for the people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's always nice to have like a touchstone, you know, like, and Segunda Town is very informal, and it's probably the most fragile, I think, you know, which makes me very sad because when I walked around there, like, people are really trying. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, hey, just I saw people trying, and there was a man on the beachfront, like building like a home, you know, and like and when they talk about like tearing it down, and it makes me very sad. I'm just like, how about fixing the seawall? Let's start with, you know what I mean? Like, that's because as an artist, I really like the form of expression, but this is a mark of like where I came from, but I can be super practical too. And I'm just like, okay, so let's build the seawall. Like I just said, that the practicality of just of letting those people live their lives, uh, and giving them some stability uh, instead of instead of that's not even it. I feel like when you read about Segunda Town and that, you know, they take down people's, it's like they're not giving credit to the people who are building there. And I don't mean like that they're building even a house, but like whatever they've built themselves. And I like, and that's just incredible. People are creating their lives. They're building their lives. No, and it doesn't matter what people think of it. It's a beautiful thing, because it's whatever you're building is hard to do. Like it's because if people could build anything, people would, but people don't, you know? So, so that's what I wish. I wish that they would have a different perspective on Segunda Town and let people have some security in quotes. We all know life isn't secure, but like a basic security of like, okay, yeah. And I think that small neighborhood, Segunda Town, affected me the most, because I just felt that, I don't know, because I just want people to have a chance, like, you know what I mean? Just, and I also worry, you know, about like what people do and, you know, where people would go if you know, they did take away that neighborhood. And I didn't get to the real of the other side of the silos in that neighborhood, so I can't speak to that. I thought Covo de Vapor, I thought that was a little bit more stable. And forgive me if I'm using not the correct word for that. But and I just think that it was, even though it's informal, I never got the sense that anyone was like, well, we're going to tear this down, which makes people a little bit more ease or security. I don't know. I think people are missing out when they look at Segunda Town, and that's, the beach is nice and it's quiet, and the people that the people I met a number of people, but a couple of women that I did talk to on a fairly regular basis, you know, I mean, two of them had lived there their whole lives, and one woman was raising two daughters there. So I don't know. I just yeah, I would like to see them get more practical help from the city of Almada, is what I would really like.
Yes, definitely.
Can I add something here? I just
Go for it. Sure.
What really bothered me was all the fucking trash. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? Like, when the trash isn't picked up in my neighborhood of Ajuda, which is not, I mean, it's a down home neighborhood, but still, like, trash piles up quickly. In fact, like, somebody like got pissed at somebody and like spread trash all over this one place. And I thought, like, the only reason it got picked up is because the freguesia has the people who pick up trash and stuff. And it's like they swept it clean. And I was just like, so not only is Almada leaving all the crap from the broken down house, but then they're not even picking up the trash. And I'm just like, and don't blame the people, because some people aren't putting it in the dumpsters, because there's so many people who don't put it in the dumpsters all over Lisbon. But it gets picked up because of the neighborhood. And I'm just like, can you just get in there and just take it out of there? Because you can't even go in there by hand, because there's probably rats there. And it makes me really angry. It makes me so angry, because it's a practical, easy thing to do. It's like, it takes like, and they have the resources, and it just drives me crazy. And if you took that out of there and you took the broken parts of the home that you already destroyed out of there, like, I don't know. It's just like, it's like something simple like that makes it's simple, but it's so important. Anyway, it just drove me crazy. I felt very helpless, and I hate feeling helpless. I hate that. I was like, if I had the money, I was just like, I would just go in there. But, you know, I don't know. So that's my rant. Pardon the rant.
with this part also is probably again the topic of the formal and informal, of really what's like, yes, standing behind it. So probably just the Almada municipality who's over it and then has like decision to make, which are also taking the amount of time, the amount of finances, and even if they do have resources, it's just still the talk of what the formality behind it is. So
Yeah,
it's
even
very
though they have
frustrating.
resources, they choose not to take care of those
Yeah.
places and those people, which is ridiculous because most of them complain because of certain spaces qualities, but they don't work towards the, they don't work to make it better.
No, exactly. And what's so funny is like, so then it's like I know this game because they played this game in the States, is they let stuff go to hell and then be like, see, this is why we have to tear it down. And it's just like, no, because if you just take care, like, it's just like, it's like, it benefits them the worse things get because it's just one more reason for them to tear something down. Drives me crazy. It's super elitist. It's, yeah. And I think what makes me angry about it is like, people can say this or da 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 da, and they're like, well, and it's sort of like, well, as you're playing your little games about this, like, these are actual people. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're talking about like, oh, gee, gosh, like, it's like, this is like an actual like people's lives, children's lives, like it, and it's yeah, crazy. The format, like, that's one thing about the formality that like has always killed me. It's like, well, if you can fill out this form, da, 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 da. And I'm just saying, I'm just not that person. When I was in the States, I took care of dogs a lot, and I was a part-time artist and a full-time dog behaviorist. And when I worked with people, they would be just like, so where are the forms? I was like, so we're doing this on a handshake. If you can't look me in the eye and do this on a handshake, then you need to take your dog somewhere else because we're just not doing this.
Fair.
And I'll tell you, the informality of a handshake tells you a lot about somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like, tells you a lot. Like, they have a strong handshake. Can they look you in the eye? And it tells you a lot about like human contact, which, I mean, the Portuguese two-cheek kiss is pretty nice, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's this informal, kind of ritual. But, I don't know. I'm a fan of informal anyway.
That's
Very good, very good. Yeah, I think we have one more question about the exhibition, because we already made all the questions and you got to answer all of them, even though we didn't made the question. I think
sorry.
you had some sort of access to our script.
Maybe you actually read them before, or yes.
I was totally
Exactly.
like just like trying to catch your vibes before this. I was just like,
You meditated a little bit with your dog.
Definitely.
I was like, Fred. Well, Fred's really. I was like, Fred, tell me what they are thinking, Fred.
Yeah, just to make a wrap up about this conversation, who would you like to invite to the exhibition of the residency, and why?
Is this kind of like I just lost all my words. Okay. And this is English. This is not good. No. You mean like if I can invite anybody, like a wish list sort of thing?
Yes. And why?
So, I think some formal representatives of Almada should be there, and to see not even what I did, but other people too, like see this artistic view of these neighborhoods, these marginal neighborhoods. And because you know why? Because once they see it, they can't unsee it. You can't unsee anything. So the next time they make some decision that is, for lack of, I'll just use a strong word, that is inhumane, then they have to know who they're affecting. So that's my social justice.
We're
And
gonna send a paper invitation for the
yes, with like the fancy calligraphy and everything. We'll just like, you know,
with the stamp and everything.
Yeah,
by post.
Exactly.
I also agree with you. I think it's important to make them more involved with the real community and not the one that they think that exists, and for whom they plan things that don't work out, because it's super interesting the way they plan things, considering like an imaginary community, and then they complain about the community that don't adapt with those rules that are unrealistic. So yeah, I really agree with you. They should appear on the exhibition and see how it really works and what people really need to be done.
Right. Because the imaginary community ain't there, or who they're, you know what I mean? Or they're, and it's, part of it's speculation. They do it everywhere. Like, well, we expect, do you know what I mean? And it's just like, you expect this community to somehow like, and the thing is, it's very commercialistic and very capitalistic, and it's not organic at all. It's just sort of like you said, it's like you need to plan things for the people who are actually here right now. Not the people that you think are going to be here 10 years from now, because they're never going to be here, ever. But yeah, totally. Take care of the people who are here and have realistic goals for those people, and realistic, I'm up for that.
Exactly. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close this conversation?
I thought this was a really great podcast. Thank you for inviting me, because I think, because I don't think I've had a chance, maybe in my own head, but I haven't had a chance to really summarize everything, or summarize and articulate it. And thank you for helping me like articulate my experiences and what I was thinking, because I don't think there's some things I think were in my head and I just hadn't thought about even writing them down yet. So I really appreciate that, because I think it's your questions and your input and the way you conducted this really gave me just another perspective. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we appreciate that you accepted our invitation. And in case you want to share something else when you stop to write your experience down, you can also suggest an episode with us.
Okay, cool.
So feel free to do it.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. This is really nice. And Fred thanks you.